The Crimson Tide get excellent news heading into their biggest recruiting weekend of the summer, and we have got to talk about it because three-star athlete Amari Niblack commits to the Crimson Tide. We have to talk about that and also preview the incredible weekend for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and you don't want to miss any of it. But before we hop into all of that, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. A few questions today. First and foremost, are you excited about the newest member of the Crimson Tide? And also, let me know which prospects you're most excited to be on campus this weekend, because there are a ton, and we're going to break it all down. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, because I do constant college football content, and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy that content, be sure to like, comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But first and foremost, let's start this off while talking about Amari Niblack, the newest member of the Crimson Tide's 22 class. And this kid right here had a phenomenal time camping with the Crimson Tide. So much, in fact, that I was told that he impressed at every single position they put him at. Now, he's listed as either a tight end or a wide receiver, but he just absolutely shined at his capacity at an outside linebacker position. I mean, praise was being lauded down on him, but it wasn't just at the outside linebacker position. I was told that he really turned heads everywhere they put him. This kid right here is incredibly talented, well built, standing 6'4", 220 plus pounds. The Crimson Tide should be incredibly excited about this kid becoming part of this class, especially for what this means momentum-wise heading into this weekend, because this weekend is incredibly loaded, and we don't even have to start this off talking about the weekend. We can talk about who is on the campus right now, because not only is this weekend loaded, but 5-star running back in the class of 2023, Richard Young, and 5-star defensive tackle in the class of 2022, Walter Nolan, both on campus. Now, Walter Nolan is a story that we are going to have to keep our eye on. This is absolutely one of the most important pieces for the Crimson Tide in this 22 class, and they're locked in a battle with multiple other top institutions in the nation. Nolan enjoyed his time at Florida. He enjoyed his time at Michigan. This is going to be a battle that's long going. He's going to be going to Georgia here soon, so that's a battle we're going to keep our eye on. But the Crimson Tide would love nothing more than to be able to capitalize on the nation's number 3 player. I understand that the defensive tackle class next recruiting cycle for the Crimson Tide, especially in the state of Alabama, is incredibly promising, but you would love nothing more than to go into that 23 cycle with a Walter Nolan in your class. He is that talented. But Richard Young is someone who I haven't hid. I feel very confident in where the Crimson Tide are in that battle. And this is another one that is going to be a battle that will presumptively go the distance. Teams such as Oklahoma and Ohio State have done a phenomenal job recruiting Young, but Young has always been very high on the Crimson Tide. In fact, we've heard him call and refer to Nick Saban as the GOAT multiple times, and that's not even where it ends. He's called the Alabama Crimson Tide his dream school growing up, the school he always wanted to go to, and he called them running back U. When you mix in the development rate of 5 stars at the University of Alabama, the article that was just posted that we lightly touched on not too long ago, that percentage is just astronomical. When you mix that with the fact that this kid has always wanted to go to the Crimson Tide, and then furthermore look at who the Crimson Tide's new running back coach is, which is Robert Gillespie, coming from North Carolina. He was the running back coach of that dual-headed monster at North Carolina last year. All great signs for the Crimson Tide. This will be a battle we have to keep checking back on, much like the Walter Nolan one, but I really like where the Crimson Tide sits when you look at the totality of circumstances, in that he's called them running back U. Saban's the GOAT. This is a dream school. He's loving his time on campus right now from his social media postings, and then the Crimson Tide have Saban plus Robert Gillespie there. I really like the Crimson Tide's chances here. But now let's turn our attention to the talented prospects coming this weekend. And not only is it going to be featuring guys in the 22 cycle, the 23 cycle, but also the 21 cycle in JTT. JTT making his last stop in Tuscaloosa. The Crimson Tide did a phenomenal job, and Nick Saban, all the credit to them in the world, getting the last visit with JTT. That's going to be big, or at least as big as you could hope, especially when you consider the fact that Ohio State has kind of been thought to be a lean for quite some time, although Alabama has done a phenomenal job in making up ground, so much to the point where now we hear a lot of people saying it could be a coin flip, but this weekend's going to be really important for the Crimson Tide, and that's why I'm so excited that JTT is coming this weekend, because of all the other talented prospects. You know that all the stops will be pulled out this weekend. So happy JTT is coming this weekend. This is going to be a big visit, one we really have to look forward to because JTT has been high on the Tide's priority list since he first camped there many years ago, where he did phenomenal and instantly earned an offer. We're definitely going to have to check back in with this because this kid is an absolute difference maker. He is that talented. But now let's turn our attention to some of the guys in the class of 2022, the class coming up, because multiple incredibly important prospects will be on campus in this current cycle. And I want to kick it off with two DBs because last weekend, two other very important DBs were on campus for the Crimson Tide, and the Crimson Tide exited that weekend in a very strong place with Earl Little Jr., one of the most important DB prospects to the Crimson Tide in this cycle. And this weekend is a continuation of last weekend. Two more very, very important DB prospects going to be on campus this weekend: Denver Harris, Terrence Brooks. Now, Denver Harris is a battle that is going to be really interesting. Teams such as Texas, LSU are going to be ones to watch, but Saban is going to be working overtime to land the commitment of Denver Harris. He is that important to this class, and in fact, if I had to pick a guy that I said is the number one guy to keep an eye on this weekend as far as like what's going to happen, the storylines coming out of this weekend, if you were to focus on one name and the articles coming out about that name, it would be Denver Harris in my opinion. I truly do believe he is that important of a prospect to the Crimson Tide staff, and I think that Nick Saban is going to be personally doing a lot of the work on this battle right here. He is that important, but Terrence Brooks is right there as well. I mean, that kid right there is head-spinningly talented out of the state of Texas. The Crimson Tide trying to maintain a very strong footing in the state of Texas. We've talked about that before, whether it be with the recruiting or the coaching hires. You have to love it. But I also want to talk about an Amari Niblack, because Amari Niblack is a guy who the Crimson Tide would love to get. 5-star defensive end out of Duncanville, and we could probably expect Kendrick Blackshire to be very heavily involved in this. I mean, coming from the same high school, he'll be trying to sell Niblack on the Bama culture. I'm very interested to see what Niblack thinks of the visit to Tuscaloosa. I mean, he's always had a very positive outlook about Alabama, about the culture of Alabama, but Oklahoma did a really, really, really good job at Champ U Barbecue, and now it's Alabama's turn to kind of return an incredible experience. So I'm very interested to see after the visit. I'll be reaching out to Niblack to see what he thinks. This kid is incredibly talented, just a really good kid all around. The last thing I want to talk about, some positive news for Crimson Tide fans. The battle for Dennis Sutton is really going to be a good one to watch, because if I had to guess, I'm thinking it's coming between Alabama and Penn State University, and this is one that I think the staff is really going to be pushing, a name that we have to keep an eye out for. But if we want to recap everything going on, the Crimson Tide are heading into this weekend flying high, getting the commitment of 3-star athlete Amari Niblack, which is incredibly important. This kid shined at every position. Remember, the Crimson Tide have their own way of evaluating. The rankings are always, they're great, but the Crimson Tide like in-person evaluations. They want to see you. They want to establish their own ranking for you, and Niblack exceeded all expectations from what I was told at everywhere they put him. This is a commitment that the Tide fans should be incredibly excited about. He will be a riser, and by the time he's actually on campus, book it. And then looking at the battles this weekend, whether we're looking at 21-star JTT, who the Crimson Tide will be looking to pull out all the stops there, or in this current class, whether we're talking about Terrence Brooks, Denver Harris, or Amari Niblack, the Crimson Tide are having a phenomenally stacked weekend of recruiting, and you really couldn't ask for much better than to get a commitment from an incredibly talented guy such as Amari Niblack heading into this weekend. But I'm really interested to hear what y'all think about the Crimson Tide going into this weekend. Which prospects are you looking forward to hearing about as they arrive on campus? Are you excited about the Crimson Tide's big recruiting weekend finally being here? And let me know what you think about the newest recruitment and member of this class. That's it. See ya.